I'm saying the West. Neyshabur is not in France. I'm saying the West. You will not be able to find one. In Islamic civilization, it's just the reverse. You have a number of leading scientists who are also poets. Somebody just named Khayyam, but he is not the only one. Someone like Avicenna composed very good poetry. The Risala, the Inia, the many poems that he wrote. Nasr Tusi, the great astronomer, wrote some very fine poetry. Sheikh Bahauddin Amali, the last great mathematician of Islamic civilization, was the greatest poet of the Persian language of the 10th Islamic century, 16th century. And I could go on. And I don't want to go on, but I want to point out to one thing. The only meeting point between poetry and mathematics or modern science or the mathematical science is gnosis, is divine wisdom, irfan, ma'rifah. And the fact that Islamic spirituality is essentially a Gnostic spirituality, in that sense, not of sectarian Gnosticism, made possible this wedding in Islamic civilization between mathematics and poetry, which is very rare in the West. I agree with you. Now, as for my case, both of these gifts were in me. I don't consider myself a poet. I just hack at poetry. I'm not a poet. I was to doodle along like all Islamic philosophers do once in a while, a verse here and there. But the reason I went into physics, which you asked, is because of two things. First of all, I was very gifted mathematically. In every class I took in mathematics, in Iran or at Pedi, I was the top of my class. At Princeton University used to give these exams for mathematics. I think they still do, have this big exam center in Princeton, which also gives the college boards. In mathematics, and I received the highest grade anybody ever received in that exam. So everybody thought, of course, I should be a mathematician. I would, at Pitt, receive 97 out of 100 in solid geometry, which nobody had ever received. And I did very well with mathematics. I was very happy with mathematics. I had a mathematical mind. I could solve mathematical problems just like this. And it was natural for me, therefore, to go into a field like either mathematics or physics. But there was a second reason which made me to go into physics and not mathematics. And that is that from the time I was a child, I always wanted to know the nature of things. The nature of things. And I was fooled. I thought that physics discovered the nature of at least the physical things. It took me many years to discover that Parmenides, really the founder of logic in the West and one of the greatest philosophical figures of antiquity, said that the real philosopher is a physicos. A physicos is a man who understands the nature of physis. Of course, you don't understand the nature of physics by becoming a physicist today. I mean, the physical world. You understand certain mathematical structures. If you ask a physicist, what is a neutron? There's no answer except some mathematical formula. You do not deal with the nature of isness, with ontology, with an ontological reality of anything, including particles in physics. So, but I thought I was going to learn that at least, put metaphysics aside, at least I was going to learn I would become physicos like Parmenides. And so these two added together, and I decided I would become a physicist. And the trouble that caused so much pain in my life is that I was so good at it. If I'd flunked out of MIT the first year, it would have been wonderful. But I didn't. I was the top of my class. I got a 4.9 QM out of 5 in a place like MIT, where the course aid, the physics department, every student was the first in his class, the elite of the students. And so it was a very painful thing to me, the transformation that I made from studying physics to the study of metaphysics and philosophy, which is really my vocation, my métier, and has been throughout my life.
I think, as you mentioned, something that's really carried over throughout your life. I think the idea of Tawheed in an organic sense, I think that could be something that can be seen as defining your life, and you can look at it even in the way you were able to reconcile physics with metaphysics and theological concepts. But to move away from theology or physics, or to look at this idea of Tawheed from a civilizational point of view. The Islam definitely is rooted in an Arabic civilizational genus, if you will. But Persian civilization has its own logic, and it creates what some see as a tension, as you know, between the Arabic and the Persian influences in Islamic civilization. How were you able to reconcile those two in your life, and how does that reconciliation affect your intellectual work?
You again have really posed two questions. First, let's talk about Tawheed a moment. Right. Until now, I have not spoken tonight about my religious life as a child, and I will not do so. But obviously, being brought up in a family of Muslims, and my mother's family are among the greatest ulama of Iran, and my father's family is Sufi family, and very strong Islamic presence. Obviously, I was brought up in an atmosphere of Tawheed, of the oneness of God, of the love of God. And through all my crises in life, intellectual crises, and so that has never gone away. There's never been a moment in my life in which I've doubted the oneness of God. But that was not enough as a kind of just an i'tiqad, a credo. I had to live it. And therefore, in a sense, I've always been in search of Tawheed. And it's that which led me to try to investigate different fields of knowing, different fields of knowledge. The physical, the theological, medical, ethical, mystical, east, west, and so forth and so on, which I've been doing. There's some human minds which are very happy with going to Friday prayers and then doing heart surgery and not questioning the worldview upon which this heart surgery is based in its relation with the Friday prayers. There are a lot of people like that. Fine, alhamdulillah. But I was not one of them. I've been a person who, throughout life, have always looked for integration. Now, to come to the second part of your question, I do not accept the view that you just mentioned, that there's a tension between the Arabic and Persian elements of Islamic civilization, except on a certain level. Of course, there are tensions between the French and the German in European history. That's quite something else. But to say there is a tension between French Christianity and German Christianity, and we'll get to, of course, to the Protestant movement, I mean the Middle Ages, that does not exist. There is today in the minds and hearts of many modernized Persians a tension between Islam and their Iranianness, or Iranian nationalism. There was a movement in the 8th and 9th century called the Sha'ubiyya, which had a tinge of that in it, but it was really a minor movement. For centuries, what Iran succeeded was to integrate its very glorious pre-Islamic past and the Islamic religion. Integration to the extent that some of the greatest Muslim minds were Persians. I mean, a person sitting in where Sheikh Hamza Yusuf studied, let's say in West Africa, Mauritania or Mali, and studying a text of Zamakhshari or let's say Tabari, they would not even know that this man Tabari was a Persian living in Tabaristan in northern Iran by the mountains of present-day Tehran. That tension was simply not there. It wasn't looked upon in that way. This is a modern invention. And I've said that to Iranians over the years. See, what happened is the following. You see this wall right there. It looks like a solid wall. But the way they built that, it was behind the wall. It's either of stones or bricks, which were laid on top of each other with cement or this to hold them together. Suppose you take one of the big balls, iron ball that you tear down buildings with, and hit this wall. What happens is that a crack appears. And the crack appears is where these various stones or bricks were joined together. Now, this is what happened to Islamic civilization after the 19th century. That is, the shock of the West, in a sense, destroyed on a certain level the unity that had been created of this one wall that was unique. In Egypt, it caused a rift between Islamic Egypt and the Pharaonic Egypt. The only place it couldn't do it was in Saudi Arabia, because there was the priests, they could not go back to the days of the Jahiliyyah.